time for another coffee with Kilroy. I have my coffee, and I hope you are enjoying a beverage of your choice, whether that's coffee or tea or whatever you like to drink, whenever you like to drink it. Because I know that some people don't watch this in the mornings when a lot of people have their coffee. You watch it whenever you get a chance to watch it, and I appreciate that. I'm just happy you stopped by. Today is Memorial Day, and I'm doing a couple things on Memorial Day. One is having coffee with you, and I have a little bit of a special treat here. And later I'll have an episode giving a little bit of a tribute to my Uncle Theo, who was the only one of my uncles that was drafted in World War II, and the only one of my uncles that was killed during World War II, died in New Guinea. So, and I also have this this special treat, which is an introduction to wargaming from SPI. This is copyright 1977. And, you know, I thought Memorial Day would be a good day to talk about this or to page through this, because not only do I like wargaming for the history, that's the primary reason. I play war games and collect war games, maybe one more than the other, but it's the history, to learn history and the tactile feel of history, you know, pushing counters around and rolling dice and trying to figure out, you know, why things went a certain way, or in hypothetical situations, what could happen. So war games are a way for me to learn history, but they're also, you know, a way for me to, you know, pay respect and remember, you know, what happened before. I mean, I try to learn from history, and I think it's a good thing for me, and I think it'd be a good thing for all of us to learn from history. So, you know, so war games are a way for me to remember, to respect, and to, you know, to memorialize, you know, what has gone on before and some of the sacrifices that have gone on before. And war games have a unique way of presenting that, more so than, you know, other games in the hobby, because war games are dealing with relatively serious subjects and dealing with, you know, the loss of life and the greatest sacrifice. So I thought an introduction to wargaming and understanding wargaming would be a nice page through on a day like today. And in fact, I started to work on, and I'll do more on it at some point, but I was starting to do like a Wargaming 101, you know, with some of the hot topics of wargaming, you know, for someone who's just getting into the hobby and wants to understand what it is. And I did a video on scale, which actually got nominated for a Charlie, but lost out to the policeman out near Springfield. So no bitter feelings there. Actually, he's a good guy. And I was going to do some other ones, you know, talking about, you know, some of the terminology and talking about some of the symbology, you know, the NATO symbols and stuff like that, and talking about some of the key, you know, elements, you know, the CRT. No, not that CRT, but you know, combat results tables, and how those come into play, and how some certain games handle you know, scale and area differently, you know, area movement versus, you know, hex versus grids. You know, one of the first board games, you know, Tactics and Tactics 2, you know, was on a grid, you know, square grid. I was going to go into a lot of those features and talk about war games in general, and I was going to start, you know, with what is a war game, and boy, that ran into a brick wall. And at that time, there was a lot of talk about it, and there's still a lot of talk about it today. It's in and around all of us talking about war games, and it's, you know, it's mainly in connection with defining what a war game is with respect to categorizing it for awards and accolades and the like, and also trying to define it to what's in the hobby and what's out of the hobby and the like. And I'm not going to go into that today. I might be tempted, and I call that a temptation because that's the fruit of a poisonous tree right there. To talk about it. So I didn't get into as much of that series as I kind of wanted to. And then I picked this up, and this covers a lot of the stuff that I was thinking about covering. I was going to, the history of wargaming, how do we get here? And some of the terminology and some of the key elements and the like. And so I thought this would be a good, start to, if I am going to do a series, well, this is the beginning of it, I guess, even though I've already done a few episodes on other topics. This is kind of an introduction to wargaming, and for you that use wargaming to learn history and to respect history and to, not repeat history and to remember those who lived the history, well, then, Memorial Day might be a good time to cover this. So enough of that. Let's get to my coffee. Time to take a sip. We can play a drinking game. Every time I say what is a war game, you can have a drink. But be careful what you're drinking, because that could be you could be right off the table. So anyway, introduction to wargaming. This is copyright 1977 from SPI, and this was really more of a advertisement. This was a glorified advertisement for SPI. I mean, they do go into some of the elements, the basics of wargaming and what is wargaming and what we got, how do we get here, and the symbology and the terminology. However, they use most of this real estate to talk about their own games, and they should, because they publish this, right? So this really is a more of an advertising piece, and a smart one at that. Hey, you want to know about wargaming? We're going to tell you about wargaming, and so we should be your first game. Now, I've done some pieces talking about Avalon Hill versus SPI, and disclaimer, I was an Avalon Hill brat. I grew up with Avalon Hill. That was my first war games. My first war game I ever bought was Panzer Leader. First, small unit tactical game I played was Panzer Blitz, and then played Squad Leader and played Longest Day and Third Reich. I mean, I was more of an Avalon Hill fanboy, and I only got into SPI much later in life, and I have appreciation for what SPI meant to the hobby and what it's done, and it took the hobby in definitely a little bit different direction than what Avalon Hill was going, kind of refined the industry a little bit. So anyway, this is an SPI publication, Introduction to Wargaming, talks about a note to the new gamer, history of wargaming, basic wargaming library. I wonder if there's any games other than SPI in there. Spoiler alert. Basic tactics, solitaire play, game speak glossary, military unit symbols, and S&T moves master index. So there you have that. So here we have a note to the new gamer. It's talking about what is wargaming. Oh, there. Time to drink, and just a little bit about getting into the hobby, and then they go into the history of wargaming. And this is a good piece here, and I do want to do. I did a couple of pieces that I just never put the voiceover on, where I started outlining some of the history of the hobby, and other people have done it much better than I have, and talk about it on their show on a regular basis. But I was going to try to do my own take on it. But this is a nice little introduction to it, going back to, where in the Prussia and the German development of wargaming, for the Prussian army, and then, bringing it up to speed. And they actually go into miniatures here, and I've covered that in some of my segments, and especially in my article that I did on Board Game Geek on the development of small unit tactical war games, about how that kind of emanates or gets its start in miniatures. And so that's with H.G. Wells, the H.G. Wells. So this is an interesting article, and they talk about Charles Roberts and tactics, and then they go into SPI a little bit, but they're not as clear on SPI, which I found kind of odd since this is an SPI piece. But they kind of talk about SPI like you know who they are and how they got here, but they kind of do lay out everything else in a little bit in a nice little fashion there. Then you got the basic game library, and they talk about it through introductory levels, like introductory, intermediate. And of course, you got a little tag here to sell into them so they can get you as a client. Moderately complex. But again, all these games are SPI games. Imagine that. So they talk about, the different levels of gaming and how you can ease into it and what you should start with and how you should advance, but it's all their games. And, and I'm not going to begrudge them that. They published this. They should use the, they paid for this mic. So then you got the basic tactics for a new gamer. They talk about, and this is in a little interesting piece on tactics and, combat results tables and the like there, and odds and some of the key some of the common concepts you find in war games. And so this is an interesting piece as well. And that this actually goes on for several pages. You actually have some examples here, of course, of their games, and why wouldn't they? Then they talk about like doing defense and how you do a defense in a line, and whether you want to do, a spread out defense or a group defense, and some of the pros and cons to that. So they actually get into some strategy and tactics in here, which is interesting. Then there's not very much, but there's an article on solo play. And this is kind of I don't know if Stigler would agree with this, but this talks about solo play and basically playing stuff two-handed because of the opponent who's always there, which is kind of you. Anyway, but not very much on solitaire play, but there is some there. And I'm in my argument that the great debate I had with Stigler at one point, that was one of the things I said, that solitaire's play has been with the hobby since its inception, right? It's been in there since the very beginning. People have played games two-handed. So, but that's a debate for another day. Now you get strategy and tactics, again, some more advertisements for its own products. Collected works, again, all this is their products. Back order of S&T, counter sheet sale. Hey, counter sheet sale, $2 off. The hard boxes with mounted map boards. And this is interesting here. The person that pre-owned this, I picked this up at Noble Knight on one of their sales, but the person that pre-owned this, was checking off what they own. So they own Battle of Nations, Chickamauga, Golan, and Okinawa, but they were looking at Battle for Germany, Bridge Too Far, and Oil War. And then they were looking for a lot of stuff down here. They wanted all of these. So, and the person that I don't want to. Well, the tag of this was a subscription. I think this came as part of your maybe strategy and tactics subscription. That person is still on here. This is from 1977, so I don't want to protect the innocent. I don't want to put their name out here, but I know who you are, and I know what you were looking for. And my question is, did you ever get it? Did you get what you were looking for? Anyway, then you have this Game Speak. This is a glossary of terms used in wargaming. And this is not bad. This is an interesting little glossary here, talking about kind of giving you some of the key terms or terms you're going to see a lot, and what does that mean. And of course, they're doing it in terms of their games. I mean, this is interesting. This is like a snapshot in 1977, where like combat results and combat results tables and even zones of control might have had a kind of a set definition that was somewhat common throughout even SPI games and Avalon Hill games and other publishers of that time frame. However, nowadays we have so many new mechanics and different mechanics, and not some games that don't even have a combat results table. Some games that use cards for a lot of different things. Card-driven games. And how they resolve things, block games and how they resolve things, like with rolling 5s or 6s and stuff like that. So it's interesting to look at these now and note that it would be a much harder task to say, well, this is what a combat results is. Combat results is attacking units eliminated, or attacking units retreat, or attacking unit disrupted. Well, yeah, for maybe that group of games, but they might mean a whole different, have a whole different meaning depending on, the games we have nowadays. So it's just interesting to see how some of these terms, albeit common, maybe have evolved over time as well. So there's quite a bit of that in here, these different common terms or glossary of terms that are common to wargaming, and I think it's still useful. I mean, order of battle, game map, field of fire. I mean, there's certain things that might still sequence of play that still are going to have somewhat of a similar meaning today. Then they got into the military unit symbols, and this is something I wanted to do a piece on, this game speak, but I was also thinking about doing a piece on military units, the NATO symbology, which is, permeates a lot of our hobby and actually goes back in time. That's one of the things that some people find frustrating, and I'm a little ambivalent on it, but it doesn't bother me as much. But then when someone says something about it, then maybe I start kind of, I don't like that. But like using NATO symbols for the pre-NATO era, right? Like using NATO symbols for ancient games or musket and pike games and stuff like that. It's like, is that really right? Or would it be better to have a symbol, like somebody with a shield or a sword or, something like that. Unless I'm really focused on it, it doesn't bother me as much. But now that we have more advanced printing capabilities, we have access to more colors and more symbols and more imagery, and can do a lot with counters nowadays, that it seems kind of simple and lazy to be using NATO symbols on everything, right? Peanut butter and over everything. So anyway, I'm not like gonna throw a game away because it has NATO symbols on it. I think like a lot of the old Avalon Hill games, even like I can't remember, like Caesar Elysia, that might have, or Alexander, they might have had NATO symbols on those. I don't have those, so I'm not sure. But does that make sense? On a Ancients game. But anyway. But symbols are everywhere. I mean, these kind of military symbols, and so it's good to know or have a basic familiarity. If you're going to get into war games, into any kind of depth, you're going to run into these symbols from time to time. If not just the basic symbols of infantry, artillery, cavalry, engineer. Some of these are armor. Some of these are those basic symbols you might see a lot, but then you're going to get into some of these other items that do crop up from time to time. And and this one goes into branch and goes into function and non-standard and World War II era symbology. Got a drink. Organizational. So this is an interesting little article here. And that's it. That's it for the stuff to kind of introduce you to wargaming. The rest of this is more of a catalog, right? This is the master index to all their strategy and tactics, and so you can kind of keep track of that and probably maybe even figure out what some stuff you want to buy. But the rest of this is just talking about their own products. So there you have it. That is an introduction to wargaming on Memorial Day. Which is kind of, to me, is a day of reflection and looking back and remembering and respecting those that have given all and all the sacrifices that were made. And for me, war games is or playing war games and collecting war games and studying war games. Some of that I do more than I play. I still want to play. As a way of doing that, to me, is a way of respecting the past and trying to understand the past and the like. So anyway, I thought this was an appropriate title. Later on today, I'm going to do a piece or have a piece ready for my uncle. I did last year. I did a piece on his flag. This year, I've got his service cap, and so my cousin found yet another piece of his legacy, but I don't have it yet, and that's his actual Purple Heart. So there you have it. Memorial Day, Introduction to Wargaming, SPI. If you had this, love to know your thoughts on this, or if you just love to know your thoughts on this in general. What do you think about this kind of introduction, and is it too tailored to the way the hobby was at the time, or is there still a need for some of that nowadays? Expanding, of course, to the different mechanics and the different systems and the different even genres that have kind of come into wargaming, without going into what is a war game or a conflict simulation. There, I'm going to drink. So if you're drinking the hard stuff, you're probably not too bad. I don't think I mentioned it too much this time around. Anyway, that's what I have for you today. Thanks for stopping by. This was a long coffee with Kilroy, but I wanted to do a page through on this because I thought this was kind of interesting. Anyway, thank you so much for stopping by. And this is actually harkens back to when my first coffee was with Kilroy. I was going over Avalon Hill catalogs and Avalon Hill inserts. And then I covered, Compass game catalogs and Victory games. And so this kind of goes back to the beginning on my Coffee with Kilroy's, in that this is kind of an insert that would kind of come along maybe with like an S&T subscription. Anyway, rattled on too much. Thank you so much for stopping by. And I hope you have a great Memorial Day. Thanks for watching.